Hi, everyone. This is Oscar with Nilu and Alice here presenting on our research project that is going on for our poster project for our policy class here for Dr. Kane. Our topic is on the digital divide, and we decided to go with the topic of the digital divide just on the fact that it seemed like a natural fit for this team. We're all pursuing our EDD and learning technologies and have combined a lot of combined educational technology experience. So we're going to go through three sources that we've evaluated for the poster project, and we're going to use the CRAP evaluation for validity. That's CRAAP. Talk about it in a little bit, but it was developed by Sarah Blakesley at Cal State Chico as part of she's a librarian at Cal State Chico, and she developed this test, which gets used at different universities for checking the validity of documents. And it's something that the three of us went through in Dr. Donald Grundler's EDLT 701 class, the Social Learning Theory and New Media. So it was a great tool that we were introduced to and now that we use when we check for validity of documents. So that's kind of how we went about it. So the CRAAP acronym stands for currency. So the timeliness of the information, relevance, the importance of the information for your needs, authority about the source of information, accuracy, its reliability, and purpose, the reason the information exists. So I'll go over the first source that we went through, and with the topic being the digital divide, the first source the team evaluated came from the Pew Research Center. I came across this piece that's one of the curricular support documents provided by the College Board for the AP Computer Science Principles course, a course I've taught for several years for our topic on the digital divide topic. So that was very apt. So the source provides data as an entry point for those unfamiliar with the topic with the use of charts and graphs. So going through our CRAAP CRAP validity test, what I liked about that is that it was very current. So its timeliness for the information, it was published 2 years ago in April 2021. So it definitely went through its iteration during COVID as well and some of the COVID aftermath. It is relevant because it's relevant through our topic in that it provides data through graphic charts. And the topic idea really affects everyone around the world, this concept of the digital divide, even though we'll be looking at the US policy side of it. The authority that provided the data that we're using is the Pew Research Center. So it's a scholarly reputable source. So it's not unlike the Smithsonian in a way. So what provides them their validity? So from the Pew Research website themselves, they say that they are nonpartisan fact tank that informs the public about issues, attitudes, and trends shaping the world. That they conduct public opinion polling, demographic research, content analysis, and other data-driven social science research, and they do not take policy positions. And I think this is important because it's similar to NPR in that it's up to the audience to form their own beliefs with how they synthesize the data for themselves. In terms of accuracy, one of the quotes that I found in terms of how they collect the data and how they kind of go through the process of funneling it and all of that, they say that most of their US surveys are conducted on the American Trends Panel. And this is for the US side. They have different policies of how they collect data internationally, and that the Pew Research Center's National Surveys panel paneled over 10,000 randomly selected US adults. They also say the center also conducts custom surveys of special populations, including Muslim Americans, Jewish Americans, Blacks, Hispanics, and teenagers that are not readily studied using national general population sampling. And I thought that was really important in looking at who is affected by the digital divide in the US. And lastly, for this piece, for this source, is its purpose. And the purpose is to inform the public about gaps on the internet to internet access as they pertain to gender, race, income, education, and community. And a lot of the charts you can actually, that are on that site, you could actually separate the data based on those topics. And like I previously stated, the purpose is also to give people an entry point to the data. So I'm going to pass it over to Alice as she talks about our next resource.
The second source we have acquired was actually during our DC policy trip, and it was with the U.S. broadband program specialist in the U.S. Department of Congress, or sorry, not Congress, Commerce. Her name was Rebecca Seawald. And so basically what the Broadband USA program does is it's housed within the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, NTIA, and it serves the state, the local, and the tribal governments, industry, and nonprofits that seek to expand broadband connectivity and promote the digital inclusion. So this branch is an agency. It's mainly responsible for advising the president on how on telecommunications and information policy and issues. And these programs and policies focus largely on expanding broadband internet access, expanding the use of spectrum by all users, and ensuring that the internet remains an engine for continued innovation and economic growth. And these goals are critical to our nation's competitiveness, especially in the modern global economy and addressing the many nations' most pressing needs, such as improving education, healthcare, and even public safety. So since our project is focused on the digital divide, the source has been relevant to our topic because it addresses the policies for digital inclusion across the nation. So the currency is obviously very current because we have met with the representatives from the Department of Commerce during our DC trip. And in addition, the website is pretty up to date. It reflects the administration's policy change and the funding for the digital equity programs. Also, the relevance, as I mentioned before, the source is relevant to our topic because it addresses the policies for digital equity and how it impacts education among different regions in the U.S. Authority. The Department of Commerce is an executive department of the U.S. federal government, and also our connection with Rebecca Seawald was our contact for this information. Accuracy, again, is a credible source because basically the policies are reflected in the website and is directly from the administration, basically from the uppers, and the current information projects that are going on is very most current with this particular department. And so stats, program plans, and proposals are reflected in the website for reference. Lastly, the purpose for this particular department is basically the goal is for every American to get internet access. And so it really addresses the digital equity, and there's a team and they really focus on how they can run the projects and have people who actually lack access to adopt and actually use the internet. So expanding innovation, especially in education and economy. So that was my bit, and Nilu, you could do source 3 for us to wrap it up.
Hi. So I, for the third source, I looked at a page on the U.S. Government Accountability Office, the GAO website, and they had a page about closing the digital divide for Americans without broadband. And kind of they were explaining the actual meaning for digital divide as it relates to access to broadband, which is a federal government has listed it as a critical issue, especially after the COVID pandemic, and with the efforts from the Congress in distributing resources, which still it is an issue for Americans. And as of 2021, the federal government has had around 25 programs involving with the topic of broadband. And they want to bring broadband to all those remote and low income communities. But the problems have been, the issues with that have been the cost, affordability, and the infrastructure, the availability. And other issues with these kind of federal programs are that some communities, they're not familiar with the application process. So trying to make that application process easier for them has been one of the initiatives that they're trying to do. So there have been various efforts made by the Congress in increasing the funding for broadband, and there are government programs that are helping these communities to have access to broadband. And then there was an interview on that page with one of the representatives from the government, which they stated that approximately 30,000 additional workers will be needed each year for the deployment and deployment of these broadband and 5G expansions. And a lot of work that have a problem recruiting workers because these communities are remote communities, and a lot of people are not willing to go work there, and they're kind of far from where people want to live. So basically, rural America and low income communities are affected heavily with this lack of access to broadband. And their initiatives by the government are trying to kind of provide them with programs that would alleviate their access to 5G network and the broadband. So that was the summary from the website. And then, so the CRAP evaluation for currency, the timeline is pretty recent. The article was published in February of 2023, and it talked about all the issues during the COVID pandemic. The source is kind of relevant to our topic because it talks about digital divide. It talks about access to internet broadband, and it talks about the programs and the plans that government has in place to help those communities. And then for authority, this GAO is known as the investigative arm of the Congress and kind of the congressional watchdog. So it kind of supports Congress in meeting its constitutional responsibilities, and helps it to improve their performance and accountability of the federal government for the benefit of the American people. In terms of accuracy, the website reports the information on the legislative level and introduces the programs and governmental initiatives. So it's pretty accurate. And then purpose, the U.S. Government Accountability Office, the GAO, is an independent, nonpartisan governmental agency with a legislative branch that provides auditing, evaluating, and investigating services for the U.S. Congress. So I think it did pass all those criteria for the CRAP, and it was a valid source for us to use for our poster project.
Awesome. And I think that's it for our sources as we work on our poster projects. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.